In the barren hellscape that is modern gaming, thank God we have indie game developers who still feel like they're always coming up with something unique. Today I want to talk about Pepper Grinder, which is a cool little 2D platformer where you grind your way through the levels. It's a cool concept, but is it able to carry itself into an entire game, or does it sink into the earth that it is grinding through? Let's talk about it. Pepper Grinder, to me, highlights what is so great about indie games. Because they're usually lower budget, they can focus more on what makes their little game fun. They don't have to be these big games. They don't have to be expansive, realistic 3D graphics things. This game is pretty much just somebody said, hey, what if we had a 2D platformer, but you can surf through the level by digging into the ground and stuff. And I just like that. So many games, I think, there's so many games that have cool ideas and then they try and spread them out into like these huge games with all these different additional systems that just ruin the game. And to some extent that even happens here, but at least with indie games, usually it's a relatively focused, relatively concise experience and you never really feel too bad playing it. Plus, if we go back to my video on game endings, you know that I would much prefer a game end before it overstays its welcome as opposed to after. I think it's always better to err on the side of short. Now that said, Pepper Grinder is arguably too short. It's only got 4 worlds, each world only has 5 levels to play through, and then a boss. With each level only taking between 5 and 10 minutes on your first run through, you can get through the game pretty quickly. The game does have the option for speedrunning the levels, but I am not about that, so maybe I'm just not the target audience for this game. But I do wish there was at least like one more world to play through. I felt like the game ended right as it was kind of getting going. And that is a positive. This game is a lot of fun. It's a really unique platformer idea. It's really fun to grind through the map. Each of the different worlds that you go to has its own little setting and theme, and that really helps keep things fresh, as do some of the new things they introduce. Sometimes you're able to grapple around, and the platforming becomes this interesting mix of air grappling and grinding through parts of the map. Sometimes as you grind through an area, that terrain will fall away, so you have to really plan out how you're moving through a level. In some cases, they just give you a gun, and it turns into like a metal slug, which offers a nice break from the platforming tedium. Overall, it's a really, really cool little package that, for the most part, completely works. The only part that really didn't work for me was the combat, and I'm not sure why they felt the need to have so much combat in this game. Now, the parts with the gun, or the ships, the mech, that part is pretty fun, but there's also just a lot of melee combat where you use your grinder thing to attack enemies, and I don't know, this just really didn't work for me. It felt very clunky. Sometimes it felt like I would take damage when I was trying to hurt enemies. Other times I didn't. I never really knew why I did or didn't sometimes. It was hard to really wrap my head around the combat, and maybe that's just a skill issue, but I think it was just clear that this game really wasn't meant to be a melee combat kind of game, and it just added a lot of frustration to the overall positive platforming experience. Now, because of the fact that you are moving in all directions on the 2D, I did find some issues with the controls as well. It could be hard sometimes to know exactly which way I needed to move the stick to move my character. Sometimes it was just intuitive to push up because I wanted them to go up, but because they were kind of facing just a little to the right instead of the left, they would go up to the right or go down or launch out at just the wrong angle from the terrain, and so then they wouldn't go into the terrain I was trying to go to, and then you launch yourself off the map. Little things like that. Luckily, the game resets you very quickly with almost no delay, so those don't really bug you too much. Other than 1 or 2 particularly challenging areas, it's overall not that big of a notice. However, the boss battles specifically, I think, is where this all comes to a head in a way that was frustrating. Because it is a boss battle, most of them take place in very small, very constricted arenas where you need to be grinding in the terrain effectively. But they don't really give you that much terrain to work with. It was really frustrating. The first boss especially, I found to be almost the most frustrating, which is not good when that's again, the first introduction to the game. It just felt like there was not enough depth to the terrain to really maneuver, and you did need to maneuver because this guy was shooting at you with laser precision. He was leading you very well. It just was very frustrating and took a number of attempts. Again, not so hard that it couldn't be done or anything like that, but just frustrating enough that it felt like it took more attempts than it really needed to. And most of my losses and deaths did not feel like they were my fault necessarily, but felt like I was battling the controls themselves rather than the enemies I was fighting. Overall, Pepper Grinder is a great little indie game to play through on a weekend or something like that. It's short enough that it doesn't overstay its welcome and honestly does leave you wanting a little more. It's a unique twist on the 2D platformer. And even though it does have some frustrations, none of them are so significant that they dampen the overall experience. I look back on this game positively, not negatively, and I'm glad I played through it. What do you think? Is Pepper Grinder the GOAT? Is it not that good? Let me know in the comments down below. What are some of your favorite indie games that have really cool takes or twists on established genres? I'd love to hear it. If you liked the video, be sure to hit the like button, consider subscribing to the channel or even becoming a member, and I will see you all with the next video.